All right, everybody, if you're ready to get started, we will go ahead and begin. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jessica Accomando. I am the president and CEO of the Hermosa Beach Chamber of Commerce. But included in the audience and hosting of today's event is the Manhattan Beach Chamber of Commerce, the Redondo Beach Chamber of Commerce, and the El Segundo Chamber of Commerce. So you might be here from one of those invitations, and we in the South Bay do a lot of joint efforts and appreciate that element of community, and thank the assessor for being here with us today and doing this group effort for us. We appreciate your time. Thank you. If I may, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction. Jeff Prang, our LA County Assessor, was elected in 2014 as the 27th assessor for the LA County of Los Angeles and reelected in 2018. Raised in Warren, Michigan, Assessor Prang is a graduate of Michigan State University. We won't hold that against you. After graduation, Mr. Prang relocated to California, where he served nearly 18 years as a council member for the city of West Hollywood. I'm a fan, including 4 terms as mayor, among many other positions in the public sector. Upon taking office in 2014 as the LA County Assessor, Mr. Prang implemented sweeping reforms to ensure that the strictest ethical guidelines rooted in fairness, accuracy, and integrity would be adhered to in his office. Assessor Prang is a State Board of Equalization licensed appraiser and administers the largest office of its kind in the nation with 1,200 employees that provides the foundation for a property tax system that generates over, get ready, 17 billion annually. So I don't know how you all like to get introduced to at a presentation, but I would like to be introduced with that number following me. So if I may introduce to you all, Jeff Prang. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be visiting so many business representatives from the beach cities. I think this is the first time I've had the opportunity to speak to a couple of the chambers, and I look forward to not only today, but future opportunities. I always like to begin my remarks when speaking to members of the public, explaining not only what the assessor does, but as importantly, what the assessor does not do. I do not collect taxes. There's another guy who does that, and he has a very intuitive title. He's called the tax collector. I'm often called the tax assessor, which is a conflation of these two separate agencies, as there is no such thing as a tax assessor. But for those of you who don't know about the assessor, I am one of 3 countywide elected officials. The other 2 are much better known, and based on what we're reading in the newspapers of late, that could be either for better or for worse, but the other 2 are the sheriff and the district attorney. As Jessica said, I administer a department of approximately 1,200 employees located in 6 locations throughout the county. We're the largest local assessment agency in the country, responsible for establishing the value for over 2.5 million real property parcels and business assessments, which last year were valued at $1.8 trillion. Just as an aside, I wanted to let you know that about 100 years ago, the assessor used to be compensated not by a salary, but by a percentage of the total assessment roll. And I was thinking with at $1.8 trillion, maybe 1% might not be a fair wage for the assessor. But last year, the property tax revenues that begin with my office's valuation provided nearly $18 billion in revenue for vital public services such as public health, hospitals, parks, and libraries. In addition to real property, which, as you know, includes land and improvements, I'm also responsible for assessing the value of personal property, which includes furniture, equipment, and machinery. It also includes aircraft, both commercial and general aviation aircraft, mobile homes, boats, and believe it or not, even racehorses. So the primary responsibility of the assessor is the production of the annual assessment roll, which is essentially the inventory of all taxable property in the county. And the assessment roll serves a number of functions. 2 important elements are, it's an important planning document for local government. They want to know what their anticipated property tax revenues will be, and they look to the assessment roll for that indication. It also gives some indication as to the health of the real estate market in the county. Last year's assessment roll, we work on a fiscal year which ends June 30th, but for the 2020 assessment roll, property values countywide grew at almost 6%, representing the 10th consecutive year of property value growth in the county, going back to the recession of 2008 to 2010. Right now, we're nearing the end of our current fiscal year. We'll be closing the roll at the end of June. We're estimating a more modest increase in property values, which will be above 3%, probably less than 4%, which is rather exceptional given the impact on the economy over the past year. And while the growth is down from 2020, it still reflects positive and reasonably optimistic change. To give you an idea of the local market, I've included a table that displays the assessment growth percentages as well as the parcel counts for last year in El Segundo, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach, and Redondo Beach. And as you can see, that the growth of property values were at or above the county average. There's some interesting new developments happening in the El Segundo area, including several new office spaces and media campuses. For instance, there's a 2-parcel office project that's expected to bring in over 240,000 square foot of new office space to El Segundo. Manhattan Beach has a mixed-use hotel office retail building that was recently approved in the city's Sepulveda corridor. Additionally, the residential real estate market in the county has actually fared relatively well despite of the economic distress caused by COVID. For instance, the LA County median sales price for a single family home rose at 15.3% to an all-time high of $775,000 in April. For beach cities, the median sales price is significantly higher. As you can see on the chart on your screen, Hermosa Beach has a median sales price of about $2 million, Manhattan Beach at nearly $3 million. The increase in median sales price throughout the county is largely due to 2 major factors. First, very, very low inventory, which means there's a lot of competition for the few homes that are available. And secondly, historically low mortgage rates. Keep note of these median sales prices because that'll become important in just a moment when we talk about Proposition 19. For a lot of the members of these 4 chambers, you're probably familiar with the annual business property statement that's issued each year, also known as the 571L. Again, business property is furniture, equipment, and machinery, which are required to pay property taxes on. The bills were due on April 1st and became delinquent on May 7th. And we know that a lot of small businesses in particular have been hit hard by COVID. In fact, recent data shows that as of April 28th, small business revenue in LA County had decreased over 30% compared to January of 2020. My office has been proactively reviewing those businesses that have been hit hardest by the pandemic, and we've identified over 47,000 small businesses countywide, which we are applying a proactive reduction in the value of their personal property and its assessment to reflect those changes by COVID. The reductions to assessment granted have exceeded $210 million so far. But even if your business does not receive a proactive reduction, it's also important to note that if you think your property has been negatively impacted, you can still file what's called a decline in value review application. This also applies to real property. And keep in mind that commercial property in particular has been negatively impacted due to the pandemic, hotels, restaurant, retail, and commercial office space. And what a decline in value is, this is what occurs when your current market value of your property, what you could sell for today, is less than your assessed value as of January 1st. And your assessed value is what you paid for it plus the annual cost of living adjustment. If you believe that your property, either real property or business property, warrants a review due to a decline in market value, you can file an application. This is probably not the case for your residential property since home prices have actually increased sharply over the course of the last year. And this decline in review will give you temporary property tax relief until that property has recovered. The filing period for decline value is July 2nd until November 30th. So now I want to move on to talk a bit about Proposition 19. Prop 19 was, as you may recall, was sponsored by the California Association of Realtors. It was adopted by the voters last fall. It has it's fully in effect as of April the 1st. And there's two basic components to this measure. The first element is the one that really helps sell the measure to the public. And this part allows a homeowner who's over 55, severely disabled, or the victim of a natural disaster to transfer their property tax base with them when they sell their home and purchase a new one. The second component is, and this is one which is creating a little bit more concern, relates to the transfer of property between family members, in particular between parents and children and grandparents and grandchildren. On the first component, Prop 19 now allows an eligible homeowner to transfer their base year value. So if you bought your home in 1990, you got a pretty low tax base. You can transfer that tax base anywhere in the state. You can transfer it up to 3 times. Under the previous law, a senior could only do it once, and the replacement property could only be done in LA County or a few other participating counties. Previously, the replacement property had to be of equal or lesser value, but with Prop 19, the replacement property can be of any value, while still allowing the homeowner to transfer that tax base with them. The only difference is that if you purchase a home that's more expensive than the one you're selling, there will be an adjustment to your property tax base. It'll be a combination of your transferred base and the market base over a certain value. The second component of Prop 19 has far more significant impacts. This is the part that deals with what we call intergenerational transfers, and it was not discussed very much during the Prop 19 campaign. In California, family members are able to transfer their property, particularly between a parent and a child or grandparent and grandchild, and be excluded from reassessment. However, under Prop 19, there's a lot of those benefits have been rolled back. Under Prop 19 now, the following elements must be met to be eligible. 1, the only property that a child can inherit from their parents or grandparents must be the primary residence of that parent or grandparent. No other property now qualifies for exclusion. Secondly, the child or grandchild must make that home their primary residence within 1 year of the transfer and file the homeowner's exemption. The inherited base year assessed value is now subject, depending on the value of the property, to an increase in property taxes for your heirs. The rule of thumb is if the property is worth less than $1 million, there'll be no reassessment. However, if your home is worth more than $1 million, as the median sales price in all 4 beach cities indicate, it's well over $1 million, there will be an increase in property taxes for your children or grandchildren. It also creates a new blended rate. Part is the inherited rate from the previous tax base, combined with a new market rate for that value that exceeds $1 million. Prop 19 also eliminated a provision that allowed you to transfer up to $1 million in assessed value of additional property to your children or grandchildren without reassessment. So what this means is now if you own a home that you transfer to your kids, and maybe you own a rental property or a commercial property, that rental property, commercial property will be reassessed to market value, and your heirs will be responsible for paying the higher taxes. We're experiencing some really serious challenges in implementing Prop 19, primarily because it was written very hastily at the end of last year's legislative session, and it's full of ambiguities, inconsistencies, and contradictions. And this has resulted in assessors statewide having a really difficult time trying to figure out how to implement the measure with so many deficiencies. And as you might imagine, if we're having a hard time, it's going to be even harder for members of the public. We're trying to get legislation adopted that would clarify and untangle those ambiguities. But I can tell you that in the short term, until that legislation is adopted, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty and confusion in the market and assessor operations statewide. The challenge as well is that the measure went into effect as of April 1st. We still do not have a bill with these corrections. So it may not be to the fall before we get legislation, if we get it all. And if we don't get it, people are going to be coming to us asking for guidance, and we're not going to have any to offer. However, in the short term, to help the public understand Prop 19, we've developed a web page specifically dedicated to Prop 19. There's a lot of information and resources on that page. We developed online tools to help you determine what the new property tax base will be when transferring your base year value or when leaving property to your children. And all this is available at my website at assessor.lacounty.gov. There's also additional tax saving opportunities for home and business owners on the website as well. For example, the homeowner's exemption, which I referenced earlier, is one of the programs I administer. The homeowner's exemption helps property owners save a little bit of money on their annual property tax bill. And the only qualifications are rather simple. You have to own your home and occupy the home as your principal place of residence as of January 1st. The exemption will lower your assessed value by $7,000, saving you about 70 bucks a year on your property taxes. About 1/3 of all LA County homeowners, however, do not file for the homeowner's exemption, leaving about $30 million annually in unredeemed savings. And the reason they're not claiming this exemption is because they simply don't know about it. So this might be good information you want to put into your newsletters or email communications, drawing your members' attention to that program. It's a one-time application. The savings renew automatically until there's a change of ownership. And again, all this information is available at my website. Lastly, I did want to invite everybody to sign up for my newsletter. We send out an informative newsletter. If you own property, we try to give you helpful tips about property ownership, tax savings, deadlines to be watchful of, and we won't spam you with pictures of me providing certificates to members of the community. We try to find information that we think will be really useful and informative to members of the public, and urge you to sign up. So that concludes my remarks. I do want to let you know I put my business card with my phone number and email into the chat box. It's also here on the screen. And if it's appropriate, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Or if you'd like to use the chat, I'm happy to read the question for you out loud. It's a quiet Thursday afternoon, I suppose. I think people were kind of enjoying this on their lunch hour.
Probably the most important thing I can say is that I did give you my email and my phone number. That's my email and phone number, not a switchboard. So you're walking away having contact with the head of the agency. If you have questions that come up, clients that have inquiries, you know how to get to us so that we can help you resolve those issues.
That's amazing. Well, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I purchased a house last year, and like a lot of people nowadays, I had to overbid on the house to get it. So in a sense, I feel like, prices are inflated, but basically the house is assessed based on the purchase price, correct?
No, the house is assessed based on market value, which is presumed to be purchase price. So what will happen when you purchase the home, we will look at your purchase price. We will do a market analysis. We'll look at comparable sales to see if that's justified. If you did overpay and other properties in the area are not similarly overpaying, your assessed value will reflect the market rate. You would get a reduction. However, in this market where people are all overpaying,
right,
the overpayment would constitute the current market value, and that's where you'd be assessed at.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Hoping, somehow get those property taxes down.
I'm all for that. My office is not a revenue department. Our job is to be fair and accurate. We're agnostic when it comes to values going up or down. We just want to make sure we got the right one for you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. We have another Mark question, but before we go to that question, we did have one in the chat that was sort of related to this, but it has a little bit of a different twist, so I'll ask it. How are property taxes assessed during the ground up construction of a property, assuming it takes 3 years for a ground up development?
So we will do a partial construction assessment. So let's say, for example, you're building a $900,000 building and you complete $300,000 worth of work of each year. The first year of construction, the property would be assessed at $300,000. The next year at $600,000. The final year at $900,000. This is a point of that confuses a lot of folks. They think that the property is not accessible until it's complete, which is not accurate. We do evaluations on partial construction and apply the percentage complete that we deemed appropriate.
Thank you very much. And now to Mark Hansen.
Yeah, this is the much better looking Mark.
Yeah.
Hey, Applegate, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, good to see you. Well, actually, we only can half see you.
I know I've been playing with my video here and it's stuck in between. Hey, Jeff.
Ghost-like.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. From a practical standpoint, I know this one's going to be tough for you to answer with all the confusion going on here, but this could potentially be looking me right in the eyeball any month now. I was very much looking forward to this legislation being passed, because like so many people, my wife and I were kind of captives of our home. We've got a bunch of new cash available where we said, well, wow, we'd like to, upgrade, our house. And we're talking, potentially we could upgrade by 500 to 750,000, which is, a big upgrade. So of course, this Prop 19 is just great for us. But, I basically told my wife, I says, hey, starting April, this new law's here, let's start looking around. I went over and looked at open houses last weekend. So what kind of real practical advice might you give us for people who want to take advantage of this, yet it hasn't been ironed out?
So in your case, the measures in effect. So there is one of the big issues we have right now are those transactions that straddle the old law and the new law, which you don't, because you own the property, you haven't sold it yet. So you would be, for the most part, you'd be able to take full advantage of the benefits of Prop 19. You could sell your home and you could transfer that to a new home. If the property is worth the same or less than your current home, then you would transfer your tax base with you and you wouldn't see any difference. If you purchase a more expensive home, then you would come up with this blended rate.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a confusing equation, but I do want to highlight that on my website, if you want to know what the new tax rate will be, there's a calculator on there. You just enter your address and or the assessor's identification number and the estimated value of the new property, and it will tell you what your new tax rate will be. It's important to note as well that even though your taxes may go up, it'll still be less than the market value of the new home, because you're going to get this blended rate. So it'll be an increase, but it won't be as big of an increase if you were to have the full impact of the market-based taxes on your new home. So I don't think you need to be concerned at all. Some of the things you do want to keep in mind, though, is that if you decide to purchase a home that's worth more, there's other financial considerations to take into consideration that are outside the scope of our office, such as capital gains. Some people are concerned about stepped-up basis and 1031 exchanges. All those things are outside the scope of our office. But there are other financial considerations if you're going to buy a more expensive home, and you might want to talk to your financial advisor.
Right. Yeah, I've looked at the calculator, and like you say, I'm a math type. So I looked at that and go, God, you guys could have written this a lot cleaner, But I looked at it and I said, okay, I see what they're up to. We're going to add $1 million, subtract $1 million. But that, I could wait. I waited through that. And I've just gone through, the whole capital gains discussion, because I just sold my mom's house over in Manhattan Beach. So all the mechanics, are pretty clear to me. But my real estate guy told me exactly what you just said. He says, oh boy, we're getting all these messages. It's very confusing on the implementation. Maybe I should ask this question. Is the confusion more related to the inherited part of it? Are things fairly clear for what I'm doing, which is just simply, upgrading myself?
Yeah, it's a little bit more difficult on the inheritance side. For example, on the inheritance side, here's an example. We have a short-term fix. We still need to have this addressed in legislation, but under the inheritance portion, let's say you have 3 children and you want 3 adult children, they all have their own families, and you want to leave your home and your tax base to your children. Well, under strict reading of Prop 19, for them to inherit the home and the tax base, all 3 of your children would have to move into the home because it requires that they make it their primary residence. I think we would fairly deduce that that was not the intent of the law, but that's what they wrote. And this is what happens when you write complex property tax administrative changes, not consulting with experts in the last 5 days of the legislative session. There's other issues that don't really pertain to us here in LA County for the most part, but there's definitional issues such as there's exclusions for family farms, but they don't define what a family is. They don't define what a farm is. And it may seem rather self-evident, but you have to determine, is a family your children, your grandchildren, or is it your second cousin 3 times removed? Is a farm, a family farm, what we think it is, one with cattle and corn, or is it a backyard cannabis grower in Linwood? So there's a lot of those sort of things that are deep in the weeds, but the assessors, we work in the weeds. We have to have these, we have to be able to draw lines between what's included and what's not. And there's literally just dozens of issues just like that. The other ones deal with somebody who sold their property maybe in January, but has not bought a replacement home yet. They want to know which law will be in place and what provisions of that law. Those are things we don't have answers on. But I think for the most part, you should be in pretty good shape.
Okay. Yeah, I looked deeply into all that inheritance stuff because we just, sold the house in Manhattan Beach, and oh my gosh, that is confusing. And I called, real estate person after lawyer person, trying to find somebody who understood it all. And I saw that there's some companies now specifically in the business of helping you navigate it. And it's quite tricky. Basically, as I recall, it's been some months, but I basically have to take out a giant loan, buy the house from my mom, and then we turn around and give my sister half of that money. But it was a real convoluted, difficult thing. And I ran out of time, quite frankly, and so didn't get to take advantage of that.
Well, keep in mind that there are a lot of folks who are presenting themselves as experts, but I can tell you that they don't know more than we know, and we don't know a lot of stuff. So if they're representing themselves as knowing how to navigate all these things, I wouldn't have total confidence in that. I think they're doing the best they can, as we are, but until this legislation is adopted, they can't, they shouldn't be offering any sense of certainty about what the outcome will be.
Oh, yeah. And well, I will tell you, no one I spoke to, and this was after weeks of everybody telling me, oh, here's the smartest guy in town, here's the smartest gal in town. Most people I talk to, when I describe my question, the first thing they'd say is, Mark, you already know more than I know about it. And even when I found a really sharp gal up in LA, she still only knew half of it. So yeah, after weeks, I couldn't find anybody who actually would say they knew how to do it all.
It's actually a really good explanation of the challenges of why we put these complex matters onto the ballot for voters to decide. That just they're not always very, very well cooked. And it wouldn't have been a problem in the case of Prop 19, other than the fact that for some inexplicable reason, the authors of the measure gave us 3 months to implement Prop 19. If they'd come to assessors and say, how long would it take you to reconfigure your organization to manage this, we probably would have told them 18 months. We would need a number of months just to figure out organizationally how to administer it. But then in most ballot measures, you need legislation to clarify a lot of deficiencies. They call it implementation language, and that takes almost a year. So that's where we're at right now. We don't have that implementation legislation. It's in effect, and we're still trying to figure out organizationally, logistically, how to administer those provisions that we do understand.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff. You put me a little at ease that the part I'm doing maybe won't be that confusing.
Yeah, I think you're good. I think you should be fine.
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions?
I could offer a couple of real quick tips that come up a lot.
Please.
They asked me today. So One is one of the most important things is if you own property, when you die, you need to let us know. Or your heirs do. So one of the biggest things that causes problems in terms of estate planning with inheritance is under the law, when a property owner dies, you are legally, your heirs are legally required to notify my office within 150 days. If there's inheritance involved, you have to file the Prop 19 or other appropriate exclusion. Failure to do so could result in a reassessment and a supplemental bill. Another thing that comes up a lot is people say, when does my property get reassessed? The short answer is it doesn't. We do not reassess your property once you buy it. Under Prop 13, the most your property can increase in assessment every year is 2%, which is a cost of living adjustment. And it's not 2% every year. For example, this year it will only be 1%. Sometimes people are confused because their taxes go way up and they say, why did my property taxes go up? And the truth is your property taxes didn't go up. It's one of the other taxes that comes on your tax bill, such as schools or roads or water that goes up, but those are not technically property taxes. Your own assessment will only go up under two conditions: change in ownership, such as adding or deleting somebody from the deed, or new construction, such as adding an ADU or closing a porch or adding a second floor. And then we will assess the new square footage. Routine construction, such as a bathroom or a kitchen remodel or a roof replacement, those are not typically reassessable. And then the last thing is, if you ever find that the records in my office are different from the ones you see at the city's planning department or building and safety department, and you want to know which ones to believe, it's the ones at the city. They're the ones who legally determine what can be built on property. If there's a discrepancy, if the city says it's a 2,000 square foot house, but my records say it's 2,500, that usually indicates that there was unpermitted construction done, and the city could take enforcement action to have you either get that construction permitted, or in the worst cases, they could make you tear it down.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those tips. We genuinely appreciate your time today, Jeff. We are going to be editing this video and including your contact information at the end of it and distributing the video to those who are able to attend today, however you found out about it through the chamber, hopefully, and distributing that video to those who weren't able to attend so everybody can learn from this presentation today. So thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Good to be with you today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.